So we are going today be looking at some manga and some J-dramas. Ironically, I am yet to find any pure anime that I can put into this. Though I am happy to add Rex to my to watch list and eventually to this panel. Confessions of a Shy Baker is one of the series we're going to be talking about. That is one of our Cozy Queers and Food series. The series that we are going to talk are going to fall into three main categories, depending partially on how central food it is to the narrative and also what some of the other themes are. Though there are a lot more themes that we can read into what food means in these stories. And we'll discuss all of them if we have time left after I've gone through some of the series, which, knowing me, we probably will. So let's do some overview things. So, what kind of stories are we looking at with Cozy Queers and Food? We're looking at stories with low to no stakes. These are going to be mainly slice of life. There's some romance, there's some hurt comforts that are sometimes in the foreground and sometimes going to be just seasoning, but that's going to be there. We're going to be focusing on building and maintaining relationships. We're queering the narrative, but not all these narratives are necessarily queer relationships in the traditional sense. There are a lot of ace stories that happen to fit in here very well. There are some stories that are very queer platonic, but do not necessarily have a label on them that would make them the characters bi or gay or ace or anything. But it's still queering the narrative. It's going beyond what it would be um, in a just a heterosexual kind of narrative. And yeah, we're going to be looking at home cooks and domestic moments. Our first category is going to be full of recipes. The other ones may or may not have some thrown in there as well. But we're not looking at professional chefs. We're not looking at things that necessarily take place in areas with a lot of food, except for the home and the everyday of cooking. So, what sort of warnings can we look into both in these books and in these stories and also in this panel? Well, there might be some sexual references and innuendo. Probably not a lot that happens officially. There are two kind of exceptions to this, which I'll go into. And a third where I'll mention that there is official doujinshi if you want to see these characters go a little bit spicier than the main story. We may find some awkward and abusive family relationships and also some questions that are questionable, such as when are you going to find a husband or wife? A lot of assumptions that, oh, you're a great cook, you're going to make a great wife for someone someday. Um, there might be questions. This is actually a question that comes up in one of them, asking a gay couple, so which one of you wears a dress? For those of you who are familiar with the Okama stereotype in Japanese, that. And there's also outright abuse, a lot of it very gendered. And that is something that definitely happens in these stories. Not necessarily in the foreground, but it's something that very much brings forth why the character is who and what they are when we meet them. There's also a lot of questioning of norms. We're going to look a lot at what is masculine, what is feminine, what is expected of the relationship and the lifestyle that a person is supposed to lead, and how this is something that can be really explored through food. So, with all that out of the way, let's move on to our first category, which I call the Fujoshi's Cookbook. Um, a lot of these are going to be BL or BL adjacent. There are three out of the five that I'm going to mention in this category that are very clearly BL narratives, though not a whole lot of action happens in them. There is one that is um, written by someone who has written a BL that a lot of you have heard about, but doesn't actually get into that or is a very, very slow burn if it ever does. And one that is actually gay komi, so still a male-male relationship, but written by a gay man for a gay man, for a gay man. So a little bit different. These are also ones that fall into the larger realm of cooking manga, which I will go ahead and explain. Cooking manga is part of the larger food manga subgenre. One of if not the earliest ones, was Cooking Papa, which was first published in 1985 and is still ongoing with 172 volumes of print. I'm pretty sure that beats out One Piece somehow. And this has recipes in it. It is a straight man who is a salaryman cooking for his family. And there are some recipes in that that have become mainstream in Japan, such as onigiraizu, which is kind of like onigiri meets a sandwich. Recipes in cooking manga are a regular feature, along with whatever the regular plot happens to be. It's probably going to be about 50% slice of life or 50% whatever's happening, 50% the recipe of the day. To give you guys an anime example of this, Delicious in Dungeon is kind of an interesting take on this. It is a cooking manga, except it almost parodies it in a way that it's dealing with fantasy ingredients and things that we're not necessarily going to be able to create in real life. But there's the regular cooking, there's going over every step of what it takes to build the recipe, and you end up with a food porn at the end of it. And yeah, it's a lot of food porn. And I call this the Fujoshi's cookbook because somehow I have only found male centric content for this, so far as the cozy queers go, at least. And I have a thought or two of why this might be. I wonder if it might be too suffocating if it was GL, or if it's because BL is mainly for a female audience, and therefore they're expecting the women are going to be reading this male fun stuff, and the women are going to be the ones doing the cooking, so they'll be getting the recipes, even though it's from the guys. So, not 100% sure which way this goes, but that is just an interesting thing I noticed. There are food manga that I'll get into later that aren't necessarily cooking. They don't have the same recipe structure that do have women, but Joshi's cookbook is all guys. So I would say like the archetypical one for this category is What Did You Eat Yesterday? Which goes over the daily lives of Shiro and Kenji. It takes place in more or less real time, so this is very slice of life. The characters age, they start off in their 40s, I believe. And at one point, Shiro gets sent a big bouquet for his 50th birthday from his friend's very petty, kind of twink, long story, boyfriend. And most of the recipes in this one are going to be relatively healthy and relatively thrifty. Why is this? Because Shiro wants to eat healthy and save money because he understands he's in a gay relationship. He doesn't have kids. There's not necessarily anyone who's going to take care of them in their own age. So he's going to be doing that to make sure they have the nest egg that they need while also taking care of, his parents and Kenji's mother. His father is a deadbeat dad and actually dies, and they deal with that as part of the story as well. But here's the thing. Shiro's not the only one we get recipes from. And changing the point of view actually changes the kind of recipes and the kind of food that's being talked about. Kenji is more impulsive. One of the first things we see about him is him buying Haagen-Dazs. He likes things that are more rich and girly, which makes a lot of sense for someone who's very flamboyant and out, as opposed to the straight passing Shiro. Yes, this is the same mangaka as wrote Oku. He's actually also written another food manga. I believe it's called something like Not Friends But Food Makes Me Happy. I'm probably getting the words a little wrong. And Wataru, who's the kind of twink guy I was talking about earlier, he doesn't care about waste or how much things cost. If there are expensive ingredients in the fridge and he feels like using them, he's going to use them, and his partner will just eat the cost no matter what it is. This manga and the TV drama that goes along with it, which is very good. I recommend both highly. They don't really go beyond innuendo. There are some moments where especially the actors discovered that they could have a lot of fun going back and forth with each other. And ikimasu, I'm coming, has the same double meaning in Japanese as it does in English. So they do use that sometimes, and there's little winks and nudges. But if you do want to see steamier content, the mangaka has written some dojin with the characters, so you can get into that side of that as well. But a lot of food, a lot of simple Japanese recipes, and building up from there as we get to learn the characters more, we get to see what goes into their daily life, how a special occasion, when they first met, and also the anniversary of that, or when they bring out, Shiro brings out some of the richest foods he knows how to make. And that's just a meal that they have to celebrate that every year now. Whereas Shiro's love of bread, after being spoiled from it by his one um, ex-girlfriend, he tried to actually play off a straight relationship and found he couldn't. Um, his and Kenji is very not sure how he thinks about the fact that he still buys bread from her, but it's because her bread is so good and he's been spoiled for everything else. So a lot of good looking at characters and coziness through this. On to what was mentioned earlier, Confessions of a Shy Baker, which the general premise of this is every Wednesday, Toshimitsu uh, bakes a treat for his boyfriend, Genta. Um, and when we start out the story, uh, Toshimitsu's coworker wants to make their agency more LGBTQ friendly, which is a problem because he is not out. And there is a whole like situational sitcom happening in the background of you really should be more LGBTQ friendly. You know, that could be seen as prejudice. Meanwhile, he's going, I'm gay. I'm gay. I'm gay. I don't want her to know. This is only going to make it worse. I'm gay. Oh, someone tried to make the tofu ice cream last week from this manga. My partner, when they read this the first time, actually went to try it as well. Wanted me to try it as well. The problem is it's made also with frozen banana, and I can't eat frozen banana. It gives me a horrible stomach ache. So sadly, it's not for everyone. Fuda's care comes into here a lot. Well, one of the reasons why this manga focuses on healthy desserts is because Genta is overweight and Toshimitsu is trying to cook things that will not contribute to that as much and maybe even will help him lose weight a little bit, which admittedly is also a big health trend for women in Japan and the world over. But there's a premise put in it that kind of makes it a little bit more palatable, at least, where it is a bigger man that he's dating and just trying to do things that maybe won't give him horrible diabetes in the future. On to Let's Eat Together, Aki and Haru. This one is so cute and so sweet, and if you've not read it yet, I have to recommend it. Um, this is about two university boys living together, sharing meals, and generally being cozy and inseparable. They're pretty much living out of each other's pockets. Aki is in charge of cooking, Haru's in charge of cleaning, and as you can imagine, being two boys in university, the focus in here is going to be on cheaper student-friendly meals. They might be getting stuff from convenience stores. They might be saving up for their one big fried chicken meal at Christmas, which they actually make at home rather than KFC. I will say for any ace uh, lovers, Haru Reads is very asexual to me. And this is the softest of feels. It's not even necessarily slow burn so much as it takes them a while to realize that there are feelings in the first place. And then, oh wait, there's feelings here. And it ends with them kind of apart, but still planning on living together. And this is one of two manga I can think of where they use the idea of plum wine and fermenting, and the idea of that being we're going to still be together when this is fermented, when this is ready to drink. So bringing seasonality to it, but also a sense of this is going to be long lasting. We're going to have this. This is going to become an annual tradition. And again, very cozy, very bringing delicious thoughts and just cute moments into this. Now, on to Papa and Daddy's home cooking. This is not necessarily BL, though if any of you know Cherry Magic, it's the same mangaka and a lot of the same pacing. But we've got one guy whose ex-girlfriend suddenly entrusts him with, this is your kid, she's your problem now. and a guy who has been recently divorced and has custody of his son, and both of them are going, what do? So they decide to live together and to essentially co-parent their kids. And they deal with a fair amount of homophobic assumptions because they're two guys living together. That must mean something, right? No, not necessarily. Again, still queering the narrative, whether or not it's queer in of itself. But again, lots of recipes, a lot of things that are going to be more family friendly. I will say I've not read this one personally, but I found out while I was researching this that there was a J drama that came out late last year. So this is pretty much vaulted to the top of my to watch list after trying and failing to get my hands on the manga for some time. So if you want to know what I'm going to be doing in the next couple weeks, I'm probably going to be watching this. On to Uotomizu, which is written by Gengoro Tagame, who some of you may know from My Brother's Husband. Some of you may know from his much more higher rated work. This one is one that he wrote very much in 2022 to 2023. It reflects the state of the world. It talks about things that are happening then. It talks about COVID. It talks about the Russia-Ukraine war. But it's two guys crushing on each other with some recipes thrown in. There are some moments that are very tastefully edited, I'll say. For instance, there's a shower scene with steam in exactly the right areas. So if you're looking for entirely safe for this work, this one might skirt the line a little bit, but it is still, outside of My Brother's Husband, probably the most safe for work thing that I have heard of Gengoro Takame writing, and it is definitely a good one if you're looking for things that reflect the traumas that we all went through a couple years ago in a very real way. So now that we're done with Fujoshi's cookbook, let's talk about combating societal norms one parfait at a time. This one is going to be food manga, but not cooking manga, which is to say, food is going to be a central theme in all of these, but it's not going to focus on recipes. But food is still going to be very much part of the fabric of these. We're going to focus on relationships of different kinds, and we're going to look at what is masculine, what is feminine, what belongs in a relationship. So, for instance, a really common thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, cooking is womanly. In To go back to some of the things we talked about before, in What Did You Eat Yesterday, Hito's coworkers at his law firm expect that he has a girlfriend cooking for him until someone notices, wait, it's what he had last night with incredible detail for someone who didn't cook it. So he was probably the one cooking it, right? Is he cooking it for his girlfriend? Meanwhile, it's often thought of, and we've seen this in anime and manga time and time again. Women who cook well are going to be good wives and mothers. Women who can't can be laughed at. It's often used as comedy. They are sometimes seen as undesirable for that. And this can lead to talking about other societal norms as well. On the other hand, one thing we'll talk about in this area is, again, stuff like what kind of food is masculine, what kind of food is feminine. Is having large portions more manly than womanly? Is having a parfait something that only women can enjoy? And how do those expectations go into the real world? So I'll start with She Loves to Cook, She Loves to Eat, which is a very ace sapphic tale. Um, there are four main women in this. The two in kind of the front of these four are Yuki Nomoto, who is She Who Loves to Cook, and Totoko Kasuga, She Who Loves to Eat. And so they are the two who it's named after. And Nomoto realizes that she's ace near the beginning of this. Actually, more so, she realizes that she loves women because that is something that's never come up. But all her life, she has been pretty much told, "You're a good cook. You want to marry. You're going to be a good wife one day." And she hates that. She doesn't really necessarily want to be a wife, but she does love cooking, and she actually stress cooks a lot. Um, and stress cooking for her means making ginormous portions of food, which she can't eat, and she kind of does wish she had someone to eat it with her. Enter here Kasuga, who is the woman, well, kind of behind her, the farthest one to the left. And Kasuga is someone who loves to eat. She growing up, there was a very gendered expectation of her that her mother, when serving meals, would give the men more food. The men after dinner would be free to go off and do things, and she would be expected to help cleaning up. And even now, in the present day, she pretty much has to cut off her family because they expect her to give up her entire life to come help take care of her grandmother. Because what are you going to be doing? Nothing important, we know. And that is unacceptable. Um, but she does love eating. She does enjoy large portions. And Namota, after seeing her come home with a whole bunch of fried chicken, goes, "Wait, could I cook for you?" And out of that, a relationship is born. Then later on, we get Yako and Nagumo, she who does not love to cook, and she who does not love to eat, added to the narrative. Yako is actually kind of Namoto's mentor in understanding what it is to be uh, a lesbian and what it is to be ace. She herself is, as she puts it, a card carrying sapphic ace, and the fact that you can be both is something that is explored, and the fact that she can enjoy um, food pics and can enjoy good looking food, but can also make the choice that I don't really have any interest in cooking. I'm getting all this takeout and I'm enjoying this and I am living my best life. And that is something that is purely accepted. Nagumo, on the other hand, is one of two characters we're going to talk about today who has a phobia of eating in front of others. She literally cannot do it. It makes her feel sick. And that is something that everyone else here accepts of her. Once they realize what's going on, not only are they fine with that, but they do invite her to things if they know she's comfortable and make sure that there's a drink option for her so she can still enjoy the company without any expectation on her to partake in food with the rest of them. So if you want something that's all about accepting you as you are and adding food into that in ways that are, again, very cozy and will make you feel like, yeah, there's a whole lot of good out there, this is going to be for you. Onto Konya Sukiyaki Dayo, which I only realized had a manga adaptation, or that originally was a manga when I was making the slide. Um, Two main characters in this, Aiko and Tomoko. One of them is romantic and one of them is ace. Guess which one is which, given that one of their names means love and one of their names means friend. Um, so Aiko is a successful career woman, but has no interest in cooking, isn't really good at cleaning either. And when we first meet her, actually, her fiance has just broken up with her because he wants to eat meals made by his wife. And she, although she is willing to put forth several alternatives, because you can do takeout, we can hire someone to do the cleaning for us. This is stuff that can be worked around, but he will hear nothing of it. Uh, Meanwhile, Tomoko is a starving artist and is trying to figure out how she's going to make ends meet and essentially afford her apartment going forward when things are not looking good for her at the moment. And she does happen to be good at cooking and housework, but as has been brought up with past examples, doesn't really like the whole, hey, you're going to be a good wife and mother someday because you're good at this kind of thing. The two of them actually find out that they work extremely well together. They compare themselves to a clownfish and a coral in that they are a mutual beneficial relationship. And also, this drama is the first time I've seen the division of household expenses directly explored on screen. This is something that they negotiate while also looking at, hey, these are ways that we can have a life that works for both of us that doesn't necessarily meet gendered expectations. Later on, Aiko actually does get married to another man, and they find out that while they can live together, there's some tension, but they decide to make a contest out of who can find the best uh, pasta in the city, who can find the best this or that. So they turn it into a bit of a game. And eventually they decide for a while, we still want to be married to each other. We still want to be in this relationship. But we actually kind of work better when we're living apart from each other. So they try that out for a while. And again, looking at ways that they can still have a good relationship and go through all these life changes and still come up with ways that are living their best lives is something that I really appreciated about this work. On to Old Fashioned Cupcake, which I will admit I kind of debated whether or not to include here, but also I think a lot of you are going to go, ow, I am in this picture, I don't like it. So this is about Sanae Nozue, who is a 39-year-old pushing 40 who finds himself at a standstill, and he sees teenage girls playing and sees all these girly things on TV and goes, yeah, that sounds amazing. I'm very jealous of that. And also, if I go there alone, I'm gonna look like a creep, and that's not gonna be good. Enter his 10-year younger subordinate who essentially invites him to go teenage girl exercises, where they go, they start with pancakes, but they do other kinds of girly desserts as well, and just kind of explore that youthfulness and explore the femininity that is maybe a little bit less weird if there's two of them going at it together rather than if it was just one guy on their own. This is very much the most BL out of all the titles. It does get a little steamier. But yeah, for those of us who are in our late 30s or early 40s going, kids these days, how? How? Yeah, you might find yourself in this picture a little bit. Little hydration break before we go on to part 3. And yeah, you're so glad you're eating your lunch now. You'd be so hungry. Yeah, there's a lot of good food stuff out there, and it's something that is fun to talk about. So my last category that I'm going to talk about is Home is Where We Cook Together. These are stories of found families. There's going to be a lot more domesticity in here, and food is not going to necessarily be the focus of it, but it's still going to be something that is part of the material of the work in various ways. First one we're going to talk about actually does have food as a very main point, but we'll go into different ways that food is brought in as we look at the other two titles. So we'll start with Our Dining Table, which is very much about mourning and healing, but also about food and the things that you bring to the family dining table. So Yutaka Hozumi is a salaryman who, after experiencing some bad experiences as a child, is uncomfortable eating around others. One day when he is out sitting in a park trying to eat his lunch alone without anyone there, a little boy comes up and is really curious about his lunch, which is just this giant onigiri. It is a regional style of onigiri that looks kind of like a bomb. And he's like, it's really that bomb. And his older brother, who is much closer to Yutaka's age, um, comes and is like, what the heck is going on here? Why is my brother eating this giant thing? Who are you? What? And after some explanation, and I believe Minoru might also try a bite or two of it and go, oh my gosh, this is actually really good. And my brother is really happy about this. And we've been trying to make good rice at home and we can't figure out how. Why does it always taste bad? They invite Yutaka to come home and cook for them. And Yutaka, despite his kind of wariness around eating in front of others, does agree. And that's how our story begins. Tane and Minoru, the brothers, their mother is dead. Minoru and their father are trying to keep everything going, keep everything pretty much as well as they can. But they don't know what they're doing really in the best possible way. Their heart is there, but they've got no manuals for this, and neither one of them is necessarily the best cook despite wanting to try. But Yutaka is good. He figures out what's wrong with how they've been doing rice. They need to clean the rice cooker better. And going from there, they essentially learn how to cook, learn how to eat together, because that is, again, really big for Yutaka, and essentially learn how to heal. There is some BL in this, but it's honestly 90% found family. And oh, yeah, those two guys get together at the end, too. And something that I love about this is in the manga, I actually do prefer the J drama to the manga, but the manga ends with a time skip in which Tane, who is now a high schooler, struggles to figure out exactly how to word who his not quite brother in law is. But the fact is, even 10, 14, 15 years together, they are still all living together. They are still all enjoying meals together. And they are still very much one family. I love that. And that leads very well into Kenetai Hanashi, which is not out in English yet, which makes me so sad. I actually have the French title page for volume 1 out there because it is available in French. You can get it on Indigo in French. You just can't get it in English. This manga is essentially a discussion questioning amatonormativity as its whole. Why is it should be expected for everyone to want to be in one, maybe heterosexual, maybe not, monogamous relationship? Aren't there other ways that this can be? It is very, very good. But yeah, I will give as kind of the elderly cat mentioned in the first point here. After taking care of an elderly cat together, former classmates Arita and Takeda decide to move in together. The elderly cat dies in the same chapter that we meet them, so it is very much a MacGuffin to bring them together. If those of you who are sensitive to pet death, you could actually skip that chapter, and just knowing that this is kind of a bit of their backstory is all you're really missing. But this is all about relationships that defy easy definitions, and especially for Arita and Takeda, who are the main out of about 3 different couples who are really explored here. Food is actually a big thing that comes up with them a lot. There's a running gag that both of them will both assume that they are going to be bringing the same thing, and it's almost always food related. For example, the first time both of them are moving into the same apartment for the and they know that they need a toaster oven and a microwave. Both of them assume that they are in charge of bringing the toaster oven, so they end up with 2 toaster ovens and no microwave. They later end up buying a microwave, but also 2 pizzas, because hey, 2 toaster ovens means we can cook 2 frozen pizzas at the same time. And this running gag repeats itself over and over to the point that when they mention Christmas cake, you already know what the payoff is going to be. And then you get not only the joy of the payoff, but get to really enjoy when they decide, hey, let's do this a different way. And they decide to eat a cake with their fork, just with forks without cutting it from the outside in. The first few chapters also involve buying plates, one of them making real miso soup for the other, because the other one, who's used to instant soup packets, doesn't have any. And you even get to learn more about these characters through the food choices that they make. One of them, Arita, essentially orders the exact same thing every time. And after a very emotional moment, we actually learn out why. Though when he's not doing that, he will make weird, immature food choices whenever they go out, much to the other one's chagrin. But food is very much part of the domesticity that we see through them. And it tells us a lot about their characters. It tells us a lot about the life that they're building together and how they can really build that, despite not being a kind of relationship that everyone understands and that they even have words for. Koisei ni Futari, on the other hand, is very much about putting words to things. This is about 2 airways individuals, Sakuko and Satoru, who decide to become a family without romance. And it's interesting because I would say this is the least food centric of all the series I'm talking about, but food is so much part of the basic material anyway. In the first episode, Sakuko, who works for corporate of the grocery store chain that Satoru works in a produce department for, um, comes across him and notices that he has labeled the exact type of cabbage on some of the cabbage and finds this a little interesting until Satoru explains, well, if I know the kind of cabbage, why wouldn't I call it that? I wouldn't want to be lumped in as just a human either. And they go on to talk about that people who can live without love, or Arawase people, exist. Sachio also runs a blog, Ero Diary of Haniero Cabbage, and talks about the Airways experience through that. And again, very much talking about the specificity, talking about that there are even different kinds of asexual experiences, and also going into the daily routines of what do you have for breakfast every day. Satoru actually likes to cook his own udon noodles, make them from scratch every morning. And on the other hand, what are your traditions? They both have very different New Year's traditions, and they discuss that and figure out how it is that they want to bring in the new year and what that foodscape is going to look like. Because food as domesticity is part of the daily life that comes with building any family. And that is something that Korisenu Futari does really well. So now that we've gone through those series, let's talk about what else food can be. So food as care, wanting to care very much for someone else's needs, is a very big thing that I've mentioned a couple times already. Very much part of What Did You Eat Yesterday in Confessions of a Shy Baker, where the guys who are the main cooks in those partnerships want to cook food that is healthy so that their partner can maintain their health. And Shiro, when cooking for Kenji, actually will only cook him food that has a lot of onions and garlic in it if he's going to have the next day off, so that his breath is going to be fresh, because Kenji's a hairdresser and is going to be around um, his clients in a very, very small space. So wants to make sure that Kenji's breath smells good, because that is going to be something that could affect what his performance might be. Food is comfort. Sometimes self-care is ignoring your partner who is calling you because your ramen is cooking. He will understand. This is actually something that again happens in What Did You Eat Yesterday, in which Kenji, being left alone for New Year's after Shiro goes back to visit his parents, um, decides to cook ramen. And again, Shiro does understand why his first phone call was ignored when he hears, oh yeah, okay, yeah, you have to actually do that right away, otherwise the ramen's not going to be as good. And on the other hand of that, you will get oftentimes characters who are cooking things that are comforting to them, foods that maybe are nurturing. In She Loves to Cook, She Loves to Eat, we get Namoto gets a really bad period, and Kasuga brings in things that will help to comfort her and will help to keep her feeling as good as she can while dealing with the horribleness that is being female at certain times of the month. Buddhist communication is big. Not only is there discussions over food, but people buying the wrong food or cooking a certain kind of food and how that can send messages. Um, Again, I look back at the running gag of, so I'm bringing this and you're bringing that, never being fully explored in Kemitai Hanashi, and therefore we always know they're going to choose the same item and go, wait, you were supposed to bring the other thing? So we now have 2 cakes and no fried chicken for Christmas. Huh. And the kind of ways that communication can be explored through food there. And again, cooking various food when Wataru in What Did You Eat Yesterday sometimes uses his partner's ingredients, it can be as much for revenge of, yeah, so you're not here and I want you to be here, and therefore I'm going to use this ingredient you've been saving because I want it, and too bad for you. And that is just something that's part of his character. Speaking of which, food is self expression. There are a lot of different ways we can look at food as character study and self expression in these works. Why do you make food is a big one. In a flashback to Kasuga's childhood, we see her making pizza toast because she was hungry. And she says it's the most delicious thing she ever ate. And it was because she was being underfed as part of how her family structure was around meal times. Um, Again, what do ingredients mean? And what does it mean if you are using a recipe that belongs to someone else? Or what does it mean when you're buying your ex girlfriend's bread? How dare you? And what does it mean when you're doing guilty pleasure cooking? What does it mean when you always order the same thing? Is it because you're trying to make a wish? Is it because it's just easier that way and you don't get paralysis? Is it because you happen to really like this and it's your favorite food? And why would you not order it every time you go out, even if it is very unseasonable, like getting zaru soba or cold soba in the middle of winter? And the answer to that kind of question can tell you a lot about who a character is and what a character is going through. Then there's food as community or food as family. Um, in some of these shows, we definitely get cooking parties where people all come together to try little things. And sometimes it's because it's a recipe that makes a whole lot and it is easier to have a bunch of people there to eat it so you're not stuck with bags and bags of leftovers. Sometimes it's something that is just fun to eat together, like nabe or takoyaki. There's a takoyaki party happening in the bottom right corner of the screen. It can also be building families. Who are you eating with together all the time? In our dining table, that is the essential point of it. Um, the fact that these guys start eating together means that they are starting to build a family together. On the other hand, in Konya Sukiyaki Dayo, we end up with uh, an Aroace couple. You had to run away because you're getting too hungry. I'd say I'm sorry, but that is exactly what this panel is for. Yum. Um, but yes, in Konya Sukiyaki Dayo, we get four people, two of which are married, two of which are friends who have been mistaken for in a relationship and are always kind of awkwardly going, no, but yeah, thanks. Um, Eating together and becoming a bit of a family together. And it happens that the guy who is not the husband is the one of the four of them that's best at changing diapers. And again, looking at how they can have a relationship that's kind of between the four of them, even though it is a platonic pair and a romantic pair, and kind of a queer platonic relationship amongst the four of them, and how they can still divide the chores and divide what needs to be done, even if they're not all living together, is something that is really interesting to see. And again, talking about plum wine and how that is fermented and how foods like that speak of a promise because you still have to be together when the fermented food is ready to enjoy. And that says a lot about the relationships that are being tried to build within them. Then there's food as slice of life because as as you're probably all aware, food is something that we need in order to survive. It is an everyday activity and it does speak to the domesticity of the situation. But the choices of what food we eat, how we enjoy it, and who we eat it with and what this says about people's lives changes a whole lot. It also humanizes the characters. My partner coming into this actually had the thesis that one of the reasons we see this in a lot of queer stories is because it humanizes the queer characters to a market that is maybe more used to a heteronormative landscape and a very amatonormative landscape. Um, and I have a poster from She Loves to Cook, She Loves to Eat, just to the right of the title of the screen. And that poster is something that Nomoto sees and is taken aback by it at first. Like she just stops and stares at it because in looking at it, she realizes that not only is this showing like older couples and younger couples and even foreign couples within Japan, but there is one couple that is two men and one couple that is two women. And seeing that, even as one part of a larger patchwork in which many of them may be a little bit more what one would expect, speaks of their legitimacy, speaks that they belong at the table. Pun not intended, but very much appreciated. And also looking at, again, what are the lifestyles and how does that affect their food? Is takeout any less valid than home cooking? And is it okay for a woman not to want to cook? Obviously, the answer here should be yes, but exploring what that can mean and how someone can not be a good cook, but still be a good wife and still be able to problem solve how to make sure that the family gets fed, even if the husband is not willing to take on that responsibility either. Or how, if you are a woman that are a good cook, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a good wife. You can have another life if that is what suits you and if that's what's going to make you happy. And having more people involved just means there's different expectations, different ingredients, different tastes. And how you juggle all of that is something that any of you who enjoy cooking knows can be a bit of an issue. But overall, it means that you end up with something far more delicious and far more community building at the end. So, does anyone have any other thoughts about what food could be or any questions about the panel? One other thing that I'll mention that I didn't earlier is uh, the top left image here also just speaks of the way that food can show what people think of another person. Um, in this scene from uh, Let's Eat Aki and Haru, um, Aki actually is actually trying to take a bunch of photos of Haru, realize it's not working until they bring food into it, making a bunch of dumplings and then cooking and eating them. And that sense of vibrancy and that sense of intimacy, which are kind of one and the same, are something that, again, brings them a little closer and shows how one of them sees the other through their food and how that everyday moment is something that is very special, more so than trying to do a traditional photo shoot ever could. But yeah, hopefully I've made you all very, very hungry during this and introduced you to a couple new series that you might want to enjoy and just think through other things and see how what exactly the purpose of the food is here. Is it just because these characters need to eat? And if so, why are they showing that moment? Or on the other hand, is there more meaning behind it? And are there ways that we can interpret that and just show a bit of a larger picture about the characters, about the world, about the way society works? Very hungry and also enlightened. Thank you. Well, I'm glad that you think so. And yeah, I think we are going to wrap it up here. We're just about at time, and I hope that you all I hope you all enjoy the cake in about an hour or two, and in the meantime, enjoy the rest of Kanji.